In no other profession are the stakes higher than the world of organized crime. And when it comes to pulling off heists and knocking over banks, the rewards are enormous, but the risks are equally as immense. But what exactly is it that compels people to pursue a life of crime? In today's video, we'll take a look at the rise of Dallas, Hoxton, Wolf, and Chains, more commonly known as the Payday Gang. Nathan Dallas Steele worked for the American Mafia, which operated in and around Chicago when he was a young man. He began his criminal career working as a bouncer, presumably at a nightclub, and later clawed his way up the ladder of the seedy underworld to become a hitman. At the age of 30, Dallas attempted to pit two Chicago mobs against one another, which resulted in the deaths of several police officers and mobsters. Enraged by his deception and the deaths of their compatriots, the mob leaders placed a bounty on Dallas's head. But using his wit and cunning, Dallas was able to evade his aggressors. He did this by going into hiding, and while doing so, he ran an underground gun range which allowed him to stay afloat and survive. While a criminal himself, Dallas still had his standards and principles. For this reason, he took it upon himself to assassinate numerous drug dealers, which did substantial damage to the operational capacity of the American drug trade. Having been in hiding for a decade, Dallas then experienced what you might call a criminal's version of a midlife crisis. It was at this point that the hitman decided to appropriate a shipment of weapons and make an effort to find some like-minded individuals who would work with him to carry out high-risk heists and make some serious money in the process. Hailing from South Yorkshire in the United Kingdom, James Hoxton Hawksworth is a man who is highly skilled in hand-to-hand combat since he spent much of his life fighting with his brothers, bullies, rival football fans, and all kinds of different opponents in unlicensed boxing matches. Hoxton struggled to hold down a job since he believed that work should be done only when necessary and that the rewards for said work should be substantial indeed. Owing to his unique attitude, Hoxton accrued a lot of debt fairly quickly, so he became a notorious swindler, which obviously led to many people coming to intensely dislike him. To keep his often unwilling creditors at bay, Hoxton would routinely use intimidation and mind games, and in situations where this approach was unfeasible, he would work for loan sharks in lieu of his debt. Eventually, James was caught with his gang in Hoxton, London, which is the event that earned him his nickname. Hoxton's very first crime involved the robbery of a liquor store when he was just 19 years old. After working alongside some other heisters during his 20s, most notably a young Irish girl nicknamed Clover and later a Scottish woman by the name of Bonnie, Hoxton finally made his way to the USA around the age of 30 so that he could seek new opportunities and work with some of the finest criminals in the business. As a direct consequence, he ended up meeting Dallas, Chains, and Wolf, becoming an integral member of what would become known as the Payday Gang. As an orphan, Nicholas, aka Chains, spent his childhood in and out of foster homes as well as juvenile detention centers. Having gone through a lot of pain and suffering throughout his adolescence, Chains was, for the most part, unafraid of pain and death. For this reason, he looked for a way to push himself to his limits, and fortunately for Chains, he was able to find the challenge he sought in the form of the US Navy SEALs. But his military career was to be a short-lived one. You see, Chains was pretty trigger-happy and wasn't particularly reliable when it came to carrying out his duty with his fellow SEALs. So yeah, he got discharged, presumably dishonorably, pretty quickly. Chains needed to find gainful employment fast, but all he had was his military knowledge and weapons training. After some careful consideration, he decided to become a mercenary. Thus, Chains would provide his expert services to just about anyone, as long as they could afford him, of course. Over the next few years, Chains would find himself working alongside some of the lowliest criminal scumbags in the underworld and traveled to locations across the globe. Chains soon became well acquainted with all kinds of thugs from all over the world. When not out in the field, his fellow mercenaries would carry out heists and kidnappings and just about any other kind of job to earn their keep. Since it wasn't Chains' nature to look for new opportunities to test himself, he became fully immersed in this lifestyle. In many ways, he had found his place in the world. However, after meeting up with the other three members of the Payday Gang, Chains would finally find the closest thing to a family he would ever truly have. Unlike the other members of the Payday Gang, Wolf was actually an upstanding citizen hailing from Sweden who was seemingly raised in a stable home and graduated university with a degree in computer science or a related field. While it isn't officially confirmed, Wolf's real name is apparently Ulf Andersson, which is the name of the lead game designer behind Payday the Heist and Payday 2. The evidence for this can be found in the credits of the web series, which credits Ulf as himself, which basically means he is the character. Whatever the case, Wolf ran a software development company for several years until the Great Recession that lasted from 2007 to 2009 all but sunk his fortunes. Thanks to the economic turmoil that permeated this period of time, Wolf lost all of his customers save for one that was extremely reluctant to stay on board, presumably as a direct result of their own financial difficulties. Regardless, Wolf took out personal loans in an attempt to put his only client at ease, but soon enough they pulled out of the project, leaving Wolf with a substantial amount of debt that he was simply unable to service. In spite of all his sacrifice, Wolf's company went bankrupt, and he and his family ended up homeless and without a source of income. About 2 years after this tragedy, Wolf's mind broke, pushing him over the edge into a state of almost perpetual madness. He began reenacting the crimes he had seen in different action movies and eventually ended up joining the Payday Gang, lending his technical know-how and muscle to the group in exchange for a share of the immense rewards being a professional criminal brought along with it. While not a member of the Payday Gang himself, Bain, whose real name is unknown, is the creator of Crime.net and the individual who provides the gang with critical mission information and plays an important role in planning and coordinating heists. Little to nothing is known about Bain. The only information that appears to be reliable is that he is a former police officer and that his favorite color is blue, but even this may be a fabrication. As Bain himself has stated, he could tell the gang the truth about his life, but they would have no way of knowing if what he was saying was factual or not. While Bain is never directly involved in heists, he is usually situated in an undisclosed location not too far from the action itself. It is from these areas that Bain is able to monitor heists and advise the gang on mission objectives, the status of fellow crew members, and the movements of law enforcement officers. Bain thus plays a critical role in ensuring the gang's well-being and that heists are carried out as efficiently as possible. Without him, the crew are almost entirely in the dark and incapable of correctly anticipating and dealing with the threats they encounter during their exploits. According to files from the FBI, Bain uses a number of aliases and go-betweens so as to safeguard his true identity and keep his distance from three-letter law enforcement agencies. Although almost nothing is known about Bain, it's entirely evident that he's extremely intelligent and has connections all over the world. His ability to pull strings and make things happen is practically unrivaled, and it's presumed that his criminal activities go far beyond Washington, D.C. and even the United States as a whole. The Payday Gang have pulled off heist after heist, knocking over banks, stealing priceless works of art, and even raiding the contents of panic room vaults. After their many successes, the gang finally decided to disband so that they could live out the rest of their lives according to their own desires. But although Dallas, Hoxton, Wolf, and Chains believed they could actually escape their criminal pasts and move on with their lives, this ultimately proved to be entirely naive. You see, the gang were double-crossed, which meant that all of the wealth they had risked their necks for was completely lost. For this reason, the four were forced to reunite and return to their life of crime, this time taking on jobs in New York City. And as they say, the rest is history. If the gang actually wants to survive and regain the wealth they lost, they're going to have to adapt to the world around them and deal with the many threats, both old and new, that they will inevitably have no choice but to deal with. Sadly, Payday 3's launch was a disaster, and the game currently has a rating of 42% on Steam. I may be remembering incorrectly, but I'm pretty sure the score is even lower than when I checked on the game about a month or two ago. I'm really starting to doubt whether Payday 3 is salvageable. In any case, if something isn't done very soon, it'll be committed to the annals of the growing number of flops in the world of gaming. And that would be a great tragedy indeed. And for the most part, that's the story of the rise of the Payday Gang. It's uncertain as to where life will take the crew, but hopefully their many years of experience and unparalleled skills let them live to see another day. As for the Payday games themselves, well, right now it seems that Payday 2 may be what keeps the franchise alive for the foreseeable future. As for Payday 3, things just keep on looking worse and worse. Maybe there's a way to turn the situation around, but increasingly, it looks like the game is dead in the water. So that's it for today's video, fam. That's the rise of the Payday Gang. What did you think of this video? Who's your favorite character from the crew? And is there still hope for Payday 3? Let us know in the comments. Make sure you smash that like button and subscribe to the channel for daily gaming lore, analyses, opinions, and more. From me and the crew, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Later!